Hello, my friends. I'm so happy to have you here. If you're listening today because you're walking through something that's hard with your child, maybe a diagnosis or just the sense that something is not right, I want you to know right away that you are not alone. Today, I get to introduce you to Laura. She's a mom, an educator, and someone who has lived experience of having a child with cancer. She shares what it was like in those early days when all you can hope for is that someone will just tell you what to do or where to turn or how to do something. And she turned that experience into a mission to help other families feel more prepared and less alone. Laura and I talk about advocacy, about giving kids choices when everything feels out of control, and about how she found strength in moments when she didn't think she had any strength left. I hope you enjoy our conversation today. I'm so grateful that you're here. Hey friends, welcome to Child Life On Call. My name is Katie Taylor. I am a mom and I'm a child life specialist. If you're listening to the podcast today for the first time, welcome, and we want you to know that the conversations we have here are designed for parents whose child has received a medical diagnosis. I know it may feel extremely terrifying and world-changing even, but you're here now, and you're about to hear from another parent who has had the same feelings that you do right now, and they're still standing. They had the courage to come here and share what it was like for them, to hopefully make it a little bit easier for you. I'm so grateful to each and every guest and each and every listener who shows up here, and it's my privilege to host this sacred space. One of the things, Laura, I was thinking about when I was reading over kind of the form that you fill out ahead of time, and you were able to give so many excerpts from your book, which was so good. The question was, did you have any, preconceived ideas or misconceptions about having a child with cancer or cancer before that, or before getting diagnosed with ALL? And what you said is, thinking about it, I guess I thought it was just an automatic death sentence. And I was putting myself in your shoes and other parents' shoes that, of course, that's what we all think and feel. So when you get those devastating news, of course, like your nervous system just goes completely fight or flight, and
Yeah.
you're thinking you're being handed the worst information. So I didn't want to start there, but I wanted to thank you for like really thinking about like that was the idea, that when you got this diagnosis, that's what you felt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Introduce us to who you are, a little bit about you, your family, where you come from, and all of that.
My name is Laura, and I am from Northern California, and I am the happy mom of three grown and young adult people, and been married to my high school sweetheart for a very long time. And I am an educator by trade, so I love being in the classroom. I love teaching, and it has been a great passion of mine to empower parents of kids with cancer after we went through that experience ourselves.
And you made me laugh out loud. You have to talk about how you and your husband met.
No joke. I was in ninth grade or going into ninth grade, and he was going into 10th grade, and he sat in front of me in sex ed class. He tells a story that I got a D minus on my pretest, and he thought, this is the girl for me. So the rest is history.
So funny. Oh my gosh. Yeah, sex ed at eighth and ninth grade. You don't forget that class.
No, it's horrible.
Oh my goodness. And now three grown kids, and so happy to be spending this time with you. Can you walk us back to kind of the beginning, Laura, about what you started to notice, what was going on with your child, and what you were feeling and what you're going through? I know you mentioned you were an educator, and just what those moments were like.
Yeah, we were just kind of going about our lives. We had two little ones at that time, and Cecilia was our oldest, and that is the child that was diagnosed with cancer. Just a super vivacious human and full of life, rarely wanted to be in the stroller, tons of fun, and was so delighted to be a big sister to Maddie, who was at that time 15 months old. And so it was pretty obvious to us when something wasn't quite right with her, because she was so energetic. And it was subtle. It was a drippy nose that was checked at the doctor, and, you're fine. And then it was wanting to be picked up all the time. And then there was a pale to the skin. Each subsequent doctor visit for each little thing made me more and more uncomfortable. And finally, one night I said to her, where does it hurt, sweetie? Because clearly she didn't feel right. And she rubbed her hand all over her body and said, everywhere, mama, which to this day gives me chills, because really that is blood cancer. So the next day, like many of your guests that I have listened to, I stepped into the role of advocacy and said, "No, no, we are getting a blood test," and went back to teach class, and my husband was working from home at the time and received the call from him a few hours later to get to Clinic D at Lucille Packard Children's Hospital, Stanford. She has cancer. It's a mic drop moment.
A mic drop moment, and you were truly in the middle of teaching. You were in choir class, correct? Is that what you were teaching?
I was, and you feel like all the eyes are on you, and I think somebody must have come into the classroom to tell me and to pick up the phone or whatever. And I just remember running to my head of schools and saying, "I don't know what's wrong, but I'm not coming back anytime soon," and just left.
Yeah. Yeah, other priorities take shape and you're like, "I just wanna get to my child right now."
Yeah, absolutely. And our parents, we were very blessed that they lived nearby, so everyone just sort of descended upon the house because they knew we had to go, and baby Maddie was there and what we were gonna do, and, you're
Yeah.
trying to keep it together because you don't wanna freak your child out, but we also had 0 experience in that kind of, composure at the time, so it's a terrible time. When I wrote the Cancer Parents Handbook, that was the one chapter, even now, all this time later, that was and when I did the audiobook, oh, tough
Oh,
to
yeah.
write, tough to read, tough to say because we all never forget our D-Day.
Mm. D-Day, standing for a diagnosis day, which I know a lot of parents who listen feel that and remember that day.
Yeah, for whatever it is.
And then you get your maybe sometimes it's a surgery day, and then there's port day, and then there's all these kind of recurring anniversaries that you never anticipated to have in your life for the rest of your life.
For the rest of your life. Absolutely. Well, hopefully, I think our one of our end goals and some things that we learned early on was that we bore witness to families early on in our process at a childhood cancer camp that we were so lucky to get to go to. And Cecilia had the time of her life. She didn't really realize she was around other cancer kids. She was just having fun being the top lizard hunter. But there were, nurses there to take care of her and make sure that, she didn't get too much mud in her, her wound or whatever, and to give her her chemo. And I was so excited because my husband and I were going to get to go to the counseling session with parents who were ahead of us, which to me
Wow.
was the dream. I wanted hope. I wanted to be told what to do. I wanted information. I knew our medical team was amazing. I really got that early on,
Yeah.
but the rest of it is up to the parents, and nobody tells you that. So early on, we went to this camp, and at that camp, unfortunately, it was just the mix of people that day. It was not a bereavement camp, but there were parents who were 3 months ahead of us, a year ahead of us, 5 years ahead of us, even a parent 10 years out. And by the end of that hour and a half, everyone was in a puddle of tears because for whatever reason, that particular group of people still lived in cancer as opposed to making it a chapter of their lives. And I looked at Arna, my husband, afterwards and said, whatever happens, this cannot be the defining moment of the rest of our entire lives. We have to figure out a way to live with cancer, not let it eat us alive as it tends to do.
When you had that experience of having people ahead of you,
Mm.
have you been able to repay that to families who have come after you? And what is that like for you?
Oh, it's the best. And I think that, in part that it comes naturally for me because I am an educator and
Yeah.
I like to teach. And of course, I knew nothing in the beginning when we were diagnosed. And I remember week one, a woman came up to me with a baby in the front pack and a kid in the stroller about Cecilia's age. Turns out, same diagnosis. And she said, "I'm Irene. You look like you need help." And that was the first time that I was like, "Oh, there's people who know things." And she took my number and sent me things. We were on the same similar protocol and look out for this, ask for that. No one tells you that you have agency and you are able to advocate. And in fact, doctors want you to collaborate and to work in combination with the medical team at the hospital because no one knows your child like you do. So that got me really excited and inspired because I could see how we could help each other. We really could lean on each other. And so when I would see a newly diagnosed parent, I would do the same thing. And eventually during treatment, I had, like Irene had little flyers or little things to send or text people. Just
Wow.
say, "Hey, I'm here. This is what I've seen. Hey, I know you can ask for this. Did you know there's coupons for the parking lot?" Just all the stuff that no one tells you.
Yeah.
And it was both inspiring and empowering to give back because it gets you out of your head. And it also
Mm,
pissed me off. And it was
mm.
fuel for what became the Cancer Parents Handbook, what your oncologist doesn't have time to tell you, because they literally don't have time to tell you.
They don't.
They're
Mm-mm.
they're busy saving your child's life. And for a long time, I felt, you're not in a great headspace when you go through a medical trauma like that for years on end. And I felt blaming. And when I decided to get back to writing the book 20 odd years later, when I was mentally ready for it, I
Yeah.
collaborated with our medical team and came to find out that they feel exactly the same way. Exactly the same way. They just
Yeah.
don't have the time and they don't have the knowledge and they don't have the bandwidth to tell you which direction to go. And I thought, surely after all of this time, there would be many, many books out there to guide a parent through, kind of like what to expect when you're expecting, but for cancer.
Totally.
And there was.
Yeah.
And I think we come out of this, and if we come out of it and we're lucky enough to be unscathed, relatively speaking, our child lives. Yeah, just going back there is exhausting. But I was on a soapbox from early on that parents needed to be educated. And again, I think in part because I am an educator. I just saw all the missing holes. And 20 years later, there's tons of information all over the place on the web, and there's still great parent groups, but nothing is put together to give a parent an idea of what it is like to care for a child from beginning to hopeful survivorship in a long-term illness like cancer. So
Mm.
I was just determined to make it happen. It feels great.
I love the collaboration with the care team because I think so often the narrative around medical experiences is you go somewhere to get treatment, get your prescription, get told what to do, get the answers.
Yeah.
But that's not really, that's only 50%. The other 50% are the questions that you ask, the things that you don't know that you want them to explain further. I love the question of what has another parent asked you who has been in this situation because it really makes the
Oh,
doctor or nurse go, okay, what am I asked a lot? And then it can open up a whole conversation. And the truth is they may not have a lot of time, but when you have that one-to-one direct moment, like it can just change your relationship. So from then forward, you kind of have this open communication.
yes. And part of it too is I'm in the midst of being asked to be folded into some curriculum at some local colleges for oncologists because they want to know, I don't have time, but what can I
Yeah.
do to be that kind person and at least start, send them in the parent in the right direction, so to
Yeah.
speak. So it's a two-way street for sure.
Did you find yourself always kind of being a fierce advocate from day one? And I can kind of see it like when we go to the grocery store, when we're comfortable there, we know exactly what to ask for, exactly what we need. But when we go into the hospital, it's not always that comfortable. You don't even know what to ask for. What was that learning curve like from you for being an advocate for your daughter?
I think you're so right. And I think that was one of the main reasons I wanted to write the Cancer Parents Handbook was to help parents see where they could advocate, because I don't think advocacy necessarily comes naturally to any of us,
No.
especially in a medical setting. And I don't like that about us as a society, but I think it just is. And part of it can be you feel very paralyzed, especially when it's your child. You just don't even know what to ask. You don't feel like you have the privilege or right to ask. You just want it to happen. So you don't think about your child and what might be a little bit better for them or make things calmer for them or make things better for them because you're so locked in your own head. And I actually had a transformative experience that I'm so grateful for on day 2, which was our oncologist who was absolutely top of the line. I mean, he's
Yeah.
phenomenal and he collaborated on the book with me. So we're still tight. But he casually leaned up against the door frame. I can see him, and he was telling me the statistics for her survival, which I think if somebody said to me, hey, I have breast cancer, a girlfriend, I have about, I got 85% chance of just kicking it out. I would be like, okay, that's great. But when you hear that about your kid, it's
Ooh.
devastating. Like you said, that means that whole rest of the percentage is really up to the parents and more. So he says, she has about an 85% chance of survival, we think. But listen, she's never going to do math or science, and you just have to accept that. And for whatever reason, I was incensed. I remember just getting really still and thinking, you're kidding me, right? You're telling me that this disease might take away my child altogether. And then you're telling me that she might not be who she's intended to be. I don't think so. And so that really was the catalyst for me getting angry and getting to be an advocate for my child. And I eventually, in short order, discovered what her protocol title was. And I ended up reaching out to the researcher myself to find out the data that was going on with the POG. And as it turns out, my oncologist was correct. The drugs would destroy white matter as they do for chemo, for children on chemo. But as the researcher told me, there are actually things you can do to ameliorate or to prevent or to rewire a young child's brain even while they're going on with chemotherapy, which was life-changing. And, side note, she went on to get a major and a master's in math and science. So
I love that. It's like, dare me to
Jeremy,
tell me I won't, and I will.
exactly. And he laughs to this day. In fact, when he first read the manuscript, he said, "Who was that said that to you?" And I looked at him,
No.
"It was you." And he goes, "I'm so sorry. I was very young." And it was just an aside. It's an awful story, but it actually empowered me to get feisty about it and to realize, like, hey, this is my kid. And I don't think that's the only answer out there. And that's what I want parents to see, is the scope of things that they can choose to advocate for and dig in with, because it's wide and it's large. And it even took a long time to understand that we had a child life services department and what they could do with us and for us and be the part of our team. That took time as well. So I speak a lot about child life services and social workers and where to lean, because again, you go to the doctor's office, and in any medical trauma, you're looking at them for all of the answers, and that's really not fair.
Yeah. It's that primal instinct that just gets you to turn on, and it's that fire that fuels you. But if you don't even know what to ask for or where to start, it's okay with like, who are the people here that can support me? And then that can go to the person you're talking to and saying, "Oh, well, we have chaplain, we have child life, we have social work, we have music therapy." But until that moment, you're fighting so many other fires in your brain, like you said. Like, there's so much going on and so little bandwidth. And at
Yeah.
the end, your child's life is truly on the line. I love that you get to have that relationship with your
Yes.
child's doctor.
Yeah. He's awesome.
You know, that there's that fiery part that fuels you to advocate. But then there's the realistic part, that there are down days and hard days where you have to process and you want to crawl in the hole. What were some of the things that you did, I'd say, coping skills for you, whether they were, you know, negative or positive? What are some of the things you did to truly get through that day to day, the beginning year and a half?
Yeah, you're so right, because it's cancer as a cancer treatment, and many chronic illness treatments are lengthy, and it's a marathon to be able to withstand them in a way that's healthy for you, for your child, and if you have other children or if you're in a partnership. So I actually devote 2 chapters in the Cancer Parents Handbook, one just for parents. Like,
Yeah.
I jokingly, not jokingly say this is required to read before you read the one about your kids, because our tendency is to say, I don't have time to take care of myself. But every parent has that desire to take care of their child at the deepest level. And we know we cannot do that if we are not filled up. So I think the first thing that we noticed, there's twofold, and I'll talk about Cecilia first in terms of empowering her, was we would just observe for a while in the hospital and notice that when parents were particularly fragile, they would share their feelings on their sleeve, openly, and to whomever was around, including their child. And I really strongly recommend that you do that instead with a therapy situation, be it private therapy, be it in grief counseling. We had Jacob's Heart Children's Cancer Center nearby, so we would go for art therapy for the kids, and we would go to counseling with the therapist, because your child needs to feel lifted up and empowered for whatever they are going through. And if you are in tears around them and sharing your grief about what might happen and all of the endless what ifs, they feel like a victim and like a sick patient all the time, instead of feeling like a strong kid. And are there days when that's a little harder to do than others? Of course, absolutely. But if we're lucky enough and we are going through treatment and things are going well, it's time to normalize it a bit. And I call it actually creating your new normal. Once the dust is settled and you have this long-term protocol that you're following, and if you're lucky enough to be okay, it's time to get serious about taking care of your body and soul, and then your child's body and soul, so that you can make it through on the other side, perhaps not only intact, but maybe you found some resiliency. Maybe you found something in yourself that you never knew you had by coming through this stronger than ever. And it takes practice, and it takes intention. It takes setting the boundary for, hey, my husband and I finally figured it out, where two things. One, we tag team parents, so no one parent was responsible for being at the hospital and gaining all the information. And if you're lucky enough to be in a partnership, that is the only way to go, because it's unsustainable for one person to handle it all. And if you're not in a partnership, taking a friend, a colleague, a
Yeah.
grandparent, parent, a parent with you to help you with the burden of that mental health. And then
Mhm.
the second thing that we did is split our time. So I took the mornings for some morning meditation, some yoga, some quiet while he did the breakfast and the hair braiding. I picked up, handled dinner while he did what he needed to do for his body and soul. So we knew we had a little bit of time. And for those people who don't have a partner, people are always asking you, what can I do to help you? And saying yes is a very difficult thing for all of us. But if you can allow yourself to say yes, even to the simplest of things, like to the neighbor that's always asking, hey, could you come over to my house for half an hour every day at 5 while they're doing homework so I can go for a walk? Keep it simple, but keep it consistent, because that your body and soul health is just as important as your child's.
Yeah. I resonate so much with what you said about the emotions when you're fragile and how they can spill out and come out. And, there's this delicate balance between being vulnerable and open to validate what your child is going through, that, yeah, this is really hard on you. This is hard on mommy. We're not pushing it under the rug. And then I was talking with a child life specialist once. Her name is Julie May, and she works for Wonders and Worries, which supports children of adults with cancer. And one of the things she taught me in just such a clear, simple way, which I knew, but I loved how she explained it, is you never want the child to then feel the responsibility to take care of the adult in the room.
Mm.
So don't let your emotions overwhelm your child so much that then now they're taking care of you. So finding that balance, like you said, when it's getting too much, go to therapy, right? Find a friend to talk to, read the cancer handbook, listen to a podcast, get it out somewhere that's not your child. But it's okay to feel in front of your child and show them that then when things are hard, they get to feel too.
Absolutely. Yes, finding that balance. And I knew when I was spiraling in a way that was just irrational, when you never know when you're going to get slammed with the what ifs. It
Yeah.
wasn't a particular thing that was happening. The kids were happily playing at home. I had a little spot at home where I could just disappear for 5 minutes and just let it
Ooh,
all out. It wasn't a moment when she was having a lumbar puncture or a blood draw. It
right.
was so that wasn't the time to share. That was the time to take
Totally.
care of myself and then come
Yeah.
back. And then we worked at strategies, and I talk a lot about different strategies, and child life services can be such a gift in this area about how do you manage the scary things and the painful things, especially when they're recurring? Because spending 2 to 3 years with a child who is so terrified of a shot or a needle or any sort of touching by a doctor or a nurse renders them to tears, it's going to be a lifelong, miserable, recurring PTSD experience for everybody involved. And you can really learn a ton, both online, both with child life services, by bringing them in when you're going through something that is painful or scary for the child, and find tactics and tricks that work for your kids so that they can muscle through it in a way that's healthy for them. Giving
Yeah.
them power is the main thing for Cecilia. We got some really solid advice about, figure out where you can advocate for her to make her own choices. So
Oh,
we
yeah.
were we were able to, everything from, she got to decide if she's sitting on my lap for a blood draw, which arm, the left arm or the right arm. Her sister would hold the other arm. She would count to 3 and do her Lamaze whale breathing. And once she figured out, okay, I have to get this shot and it really kind of sucks, but I get to make the choices around it. And afterwards, mommy always and daddy always let me do something fun, be it a popsicle or a trip to the park or something fun. And then you just kind of make it normal. Like, yeah, this thing's got to happen. It does suck, but let's figure out how we can make it fun.
You're absolutely hired as a child life specialist. Yeah. I mean, I love what you've done and what you modeled. And I didn't know you were saying something, but like let your child follow you. And I was thinking about how whenever I need to get something done at the doctor, whether it's a blood draw or a shot, I do try to bring the kids with me if they're available so they can watch you go through it too.
Absolutely. That's brilliant. Yeah.
It's exposing them. Oh, I love all of the choices that you gave. And it's not always going to be go right every time. And by right, I mean it's
Yeah.
not always going to be no tears, no trying to get out of it, none of those things. It's going to be hard sometimes. It's going to go really well the next time. You may take a step back, but it's building on these relationships that she knows she has you. She knows you're going to tell her the truth. She knows that you're going
Yes.
to let her have some power back. Did you see that follow in the rest of your relationship with your daughter, even post treatment? Is that a relationship you still have?
I think we probably did that with all our kids, is knowing when to give them agency and to give them power, because it is kind of a powerless time to be a kid when you're constantly being told what to do. And cancer and any long-term illness will certainly teach you not to sweat the small stuff and to really pick your
Yeah.
battles. Like, does that really matter in the grand scheme of life? Not really. Let them whatever. Let them get filthy or whatever the thing made. Let them make a mess on the floor. Not a big deal. Pick your
Yeah.
battles. Definitely.
Mm.
And create routines and rituals that normalize a very abnormal situation. One, you can ask for things. And what's the worst that can happen is that they say no. For example,
Yeah.
we had a weekly blood draw there was daily chemo, a weekly blood draw, which was followed that evening by a shot of methotrexate in her thigh, which was, like shoving it in her thigh, not a cute little thigh thing. It was bad.
Yeah.
And the nurse wisely said to Cecilia early on, "Hey, do you want to come back to the hospital once a week, or do you want me to teach your parents to do it at home?" And she said, "Let's do it at home," which we were like, "Oh, time out, let's not." But it was really a gift. And we listened to her. And what manifested was I took it farther and asked the doctors, "Well, do I have to come in at all? Can we just do our labs locally?" So that shot we had to have in the morning, we made it fun. The girls and I would get
Yeah.
into the carrier. I would bike them around town. She knew the phlebotomist. They got familiar with her. We could just go right in the back door. And meanwhile, you're worrying because you're waiting for those labs to come back, but we're out having fun. And we go and get bagels. By the time I'm back, the labs are there and everything's fine. She's still cancer free. And then that night, that shot was difficult. And taking home a bag label biohazard that other kids can't touch, and you can't do too much and too little. The whole thing is daunting. So don't let me
It is.
I don't want the listeners to think I'm Pollyanning this. I'm not. It always took us a very deep breath to go through this. But creating the routine of that night, she got to eat dinner in front of the TV. That night, she got to watch whatever she wanted. That night, she knew that shot was coming, but there was a popsicle coming afterwards. So there were all of these things where she had agency as a young person, but she knew they weren't going to happen if she was going to have a tantrum when the shot came. The shot had to happen.
Mm.
And they will rise to the occasion. They need to know their boundaries.
You seem to have such just a beautiful way to provide compassionate boundaries, and that it has to happen, but we'll do it with compassion, and we'll think of all the ways that you can have autonomy over this, but it does have to happen.
Yeah, and think about it when it's your child, how often we just want to get through it, and so they'll be held down and sort of muscled through it, and they're crying and screaming, and you do it anyway because you just want to get it done and be over with. But there's lasting impacts to that. So shake it up. Try a new narrative.
Yeah. Mm. We talked a little bit about kind of reflection and some of the things you did to get through that time. What are the things you didn't know about yourself before you started on this cancer journey?
I think the feistiness had always been there. I think, and it really served me well. And Cecilia's a little feisty too. It served her well to be
Yeah.
powerful and kick cancer's butt. I think actually the calmer side of it, the learning how to meditate, the learning how to take the quiet time, even though I didn't think I did, because I
Yeah.
was feisty and I could get it all done, realizing I couldn't, and rather I shouldn't. It wasn't healthy for me as a human, and that there was so much that really didn't matter. There's just so much nonsense that goes on that we get feisty and upset about that's just doesn't matter. Your kid's healthy, you're healthy, it's pretty outside or it's raining. It's a great day. And somebody early on said to me, "You should start a gratitude journal." And I was like, "Are you freaking kidding me? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Did you know
Yeah.
my kid had cancer?"
Yeah.
I do to this day. And
Yeah.
it even kind of chokes me up a little, because even in your darkest days and your darkest moments, when you're training yourself and your mind to actively look for the good that's happening around there, even when you are surrounded by a terrible hospital stay or a relapse or whatever's happening, there is kindness and love out there. Grab it. You need
Mm.
it.
Were there days that you had to make yourself do that when you didn't want to?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
The more you do it, the more you train your mind, even when you're going through it in the moment. and you're having a difficult day, somebody will bring you a flower or you'll see something pretty and you're like, wow, that's really cool. And you learn through intention how to relax a little bit in your head, which is pretty cool.
That's so funny. I'm laughing because you're reminding me, I have this like, I mean, what can only be like conceived as like an ugly rock. But I went outside one day and the front of my house was just right here. And I looked down and I was like, what is this beautiful crystal? Like just the way the light was hitting it. And I picked it
Exactly.
up and I was like, this is stunning. And I mean, if you see it now, it's truly just a rock, but I keep it here as a reminder that like you can find beauty in things even when you're not looking for it, but they can show up. And so like keep it nearby. And it's a good reminder for me, but it
Oh,
sounds
thank you.
exactly like what you were talking about.
That's a great reminder.
So you've mentioned your book. How can people get it? Who is it recommended for? Who needs to read it?
Oh gosh, parents of kids with cancer. Gosh, there's so many of us. We're still, even though treatments are slightly better, the incidence is not. So we have 40,000 new cases of childhood and adolescent cancer per year in the States, and 400,000 globally. And I am hell bent to get it into the hands of parents, regardless of the language that they speak and if it's affordable or not. It's we all need to be on the same playing field. That's my goal. So I'm working with different hospitals and organizations to start seeing if we can get it distributed for people who need it, who can't afford it. It just came out last month and it's
Congratulations.
available. Thank you. It was available everywhere. My publisher insisted on waiting till February as it's World Cancer Awareness Month. So we launched in February and the reviews have been great. I've gotten a ton of help from current families online who've been remarkable. So I shared initial copies with them for free, of course. And
Yeah.
I just wanted to get into the hands of people so that we all have the same information and what we choose to do with it is up to us. So it's everywhere, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, online.
Congratulations.
Thank
I
you.
love too that you kind of had this pause after treatment. I think there's so many ways to do it and not one way works, but it's okay to right after something happens, you feel like, how I need to give back. I need to do XYZ. And maybe that just comes in the form of finding a mom you can text and say something. It doesn't have to be writing a book, but you may see that at a certain time you may be ready to do that.
Yeah. I got really lucky. And that was a COVID gift because you were
Mm.
doing less as a teacher during COVID and that's when it came up again. And ever since then, every person I've been introduced to in the book publishing world, it's been a yes ever since. So I knew it was time and I knew I was supposed to do it.
Oh, amazing. Well, thank you for sharing your gifts with us. Cannot wait to share more about your book. I'm so grateful for your candidness, the stories you tell and how authentic you are in acknowledging what it was like for you. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I want to be your cheerleader. If you're a cancer parent, you need a cheerleader and someone who's going to be
You
there for
do.
you. I'm here for you.
I want you to be my personal cheerleader too. You have such a call. I think it's interesting that your reflection on yourself was that bit of calm because what
Yeah.
I feel when I'm with you right now is like a steadiness, a calm, a feisty, but not in like an aggressive way. It's like just like I know you're going to fight. I know you're going to be there. So parents are very lucky to have you to look to. As a parent, you want to be there for your child, especially when it comes to their health. But healthcare can be overwhelming and confusing. The good news is child life specialists are experts who help families navigate these challenges. But often our support is only in hospitals. So imagine if you had access to these valuable tools and resources all the time. You would be able to understand medical procedures, explain them to your child, and help them feel less anxious, which also makes you probably feel less anxious. So, when your child visits the doctor, has surgery, or has a medical procedure, having the right information and support can make all the difference. You, the parent, can be prepared to answer their questions, calm their fears, and advocate for their needs. Child Life Specialist tools are ready to be in your hands right now through our app Support Spot. All you have to do is go to the iOS or Android store, type in Support Spot. We are giving all of our listeners on this podcast access to the app for just $19.99 for an entire year. You are going to have, I'm not kidding, 7 years worth of resources and support and information that we have been building at Child Life on Call at your fingertips. With these tools in your pocket, you can transform the way your family experiences medical care. Parents, you deserve to be informed and feel confident in your child's healthcare journey. And by having access to Support Spot,
you can ensure that your child feels supported and understood no matter what medical challenges come your way. Head to the link in the show notes or go to your app store, type in Support Spot to download it today. For those of